Happy Friday. I wasn't going to do a Black History Month show, but then it turns out that if I don't, I've seen what's out there and it's not pretty, right? So this is going to be your Black History Month show. It's an interesting month for me because I actually don't think it makes sense without a white terrorism month because, my dad's from Ghana. In Ghana, he was Ashanti. He didn't become black till he got here. And when he got here, the only reason you're black is because like white people are terrorists. So, and sociopaths. So black history should, in a well-ordered world, come with a come with a companion month on just white terrorism, because I think that's what really governs race in America. But I'm going to talk a little bit about Black history, how we do it right, how we do it wrong, and I think it'll be a fascinating show. I strongly suspect. And I'm going to start it off with, I want to wait till people file in before I get to the real anecdote, because I was talking to a buddy yesterday and it was fantastic. Oh, while people are waiting, people ask me about stock advice. I don't know why. But I will say that Urban, this is not stock advice. I do not know anything. I am dumb money. I do know that Urban One is a black-owned company that's on Robinhood. It might do pretty well for this month. Apparently, it shoots up every February and then gets cut out in March. So maybe you want to make some quick money, or maybe you want to invest in a black-owned company, make you feel good, or pressure. What you should do is, if you have any connections with white people, pressure them to invest in a black-owned company. And if it starts going down, you cut out and leave them holding the bag. That's what, it's not going anywhere. So if you want to try to pump and dump some black people, not black people, like I said, you get white people to invest in it, and then you leave before they do. And I don't know, maybe you can make a little, maybe you can't. That's Urban One. Apparently it's run out of Maryland. Anyway, let us, you and I, talk about Black History Month. And, honestly, why I did the show and why what committed me to doing this show was I saw this. Now, mind you, this is in Toronto. So it's in Canada, but this is unacceptable. And and this is what happens when you don't control your own message. And look at that. I just sit with that. And I don't know, what does that mean, people? It means I need to do a Black History Month show because people are confused. People are confused about what it means to be black in these United States, and that's the cost. And let me hit the opening.
To the beat, y'all.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
To the beat, y'all.
Yeah. Sound good to me. Never change the ways for the world or the government. If I was the president, then I would state facts. You leave it up to me, I paint the White House black and ain't no future in your front.
To the beat, y'all.
So now that people are here, let me start it off with a story. Gather around. I'm going to tell a little story about a friend I was talking to a few days ago. He was in the venture capital scene a few years back, and his company was going to buy Rosetta Stone, the foreign language learning company. And, they were putting together the deal, and, they were crunching the numbers. And his fund asked Rosetta Stone people, so what do you guys spend in customer service? And the Rosetta Stone people said, listen, we actually don't spend a lot of money in customer service. And he's like, how don't you don't spend any money in customer service? And the Rosetta Stone people said, no, the thing is, nobody opens the box, right? Nobody opens the box, right? So we sell aspiration to learn a language. We have a brand and we spend a lot of money on marketing, but the product, And we market it such that if it doesn't work, they blame themselves, not us. So we don't have to worry about customer service. Like we don't have to, you know, we're in the marketing business, and we're in the aspiration business, not in the language learning business with two different businesses. You don't know that that's two different businesses. That's how the Rosetta Stone people eat. Gym memberships are the same way. They sell aspiration, which is one thing. The question is, what is time selling right here? What is time selling right here? Look at Amanda Gorman, Black Excellence, with an interview with Michelle Obama. And with Ibram Kendi writing a Black Renaissance. I don't want any Renaissance where Black people still end up broke at the end. They're broke before, they're broke during, and then they're broke after. No Renaissance for me. I'll take, nope, I want Black people working. Right? So what are they selling? That's the Rosetta Stone for Negroes. They're selling aspiration. And hopefully you stroke out, die of COVID, or have a heart attack before you realize, while you blame yourself for not, arriving like Michelle Obama. You blame yourself for not arriving, and the merry-go-round keeps going, right? Even MLK talked about this with Ralph Bunchy. He was like, you know what? People look at Ralph Bunchy and it's like they'll be broke, but they look at him and as if like all of his dignity can be like parceled out to 20 million. At the time, it's 20 million. Now it's 40 million. All of that, like at the time, it could be parceled out to all of those little Negroes. You just have one guy to look up to, and it's like his dignity gets parceled out. And that is not the right way to talk about the struggle. This is what MLK said. Like that was MLK. So this is the hustle. Like that is, time is selling aspiration. Because if you sell aspiration, then you don't have to actually secure Black people jobs and assets. I have a problem with that. But I think the Rosetta Stone story is appropriate. They weren't selling language learning. They were selling aspiration. So they put their money in marketing, not actually like figuring out, and then like sold a story about how you could do it through apps. But the truth is, it was never going to work. And they don't care because this is the kicker. They get you to blame yourself. And I'll tell you, if you control the Black mind, you control Black behinds. And if you can get Black people to blame themselves, then you have won the game. You have won the game. There's a $1 billion industry in controlling the Black mind because we have a legitimate claim. And when you have a legitimate claim, you have to keep us distracted from actually making our legitimate claim. And, the legitimate claim is America's legitimate claim. Everyone deserves a good job and assets, but Black people deserve them also and especially. And I want a big chunk of Oregon just for Black people. Coastal line. So what does it mean that people sell us aspiration as opposed to assets? What does it mean that we have a Black History Month that celebrates Black people, but doesn't talk about white terrorism? And you don't really understand. Nothing about Black life makes sense unless you understand white terrorism. And that it is terrorism. That we have a culture that produces regularly sociopaths, and that Black people are a colony within a marginally functional America. We are the stable underclass as a community. And if we fight back, there will be blood. Because they're not going to give it up voluntarily. It's like what does it mean to be a colonized people, an internal colony in the United States? Well, it means every now and then you get pictures of Black excellence. You get an article about Kamala Harris, broke the tie, so we get a stimulus. You won't get the article that says like black people still be broke. Right? Like this is a $1,400. We don't have $1,400 problems. Even if we had $1,400 problems back in November, by now, like interest, like the VIG, like it's gone up. We don't have $1,400 problems. So you can give everyone Negro a $1,400 check. Like, I don't know. And, you know, it's going to not disproportionately go to us because we're unbanked and it's kind of hard to find us. My dad was a paralegal. And, you know, it's a slip and fall. He worked in a law office in LA, and a lot of people came in with slip and falls, but sometimes it was hard to find them to check because, you know, he worked in what there was a black LA. He worked in there, and like, you know, we're mobile people. We keep getting run out because we can't afford to live places, so it's hard to get us our money. So that's the same thing that happens with the last stimulus check. Black people were disproportionately left out of it because we're unbanked. Even I went without a bank for about 5 years. I got hit with a bunch of Chase or Wells Fargo fees after being with them for like a decade. This is back in my salad days, like late 20s, something like that. I got hit with a bunch of late fees. I think I'd gotten my check. I'd gotten my paycheck, and then I went to Walgreens and picked up a toothbrush. Then I took myself to a movie, and then like I did something else. And I did I got my check, deposited it, did those 3 things. The check didn't clear for a day, and I got hit with like 3 overdraft fees within the span of like within that day. And then it came immediately out of my check when it hit that same day. And that's when I quit Wells Fargo after 10 years. I started with them when I was 18 and left when I was 28 because of that. And I was just like, no, I can't do that. Especially at the time I was living at the margin. And when you're at the margin, $75, you can't take a hit like that. Not when you're living at the margin like I was. So I was unbanked for years. Just because you go to a check cashing place, they take those right off. And like you don't have to worry about hidden fees. But yeah, so by the way, I am a fan of universal banking. I mean, if you need a bank account in order to be a functioning citizen in civil society, then you need to secure people a bank account. Like, and in terms of overdraft, you just deny the card if it's going to send someone over. Like this isn't that complicated of an issue, but instead we like predatory banking and we privatize it. And I'm okay with privatizing a private bank, but then you have to like regulate them so they don't fleece people for both wanting to be functional and not having access to good jobs. And I want to, actually give people access to good jobs and fair wages. So let's go back to not this picture that launched this show. What's awful about, and there's a lot of awful things. It's like they just drew, they painted pictures of all of the black guys they locked up. Like that's what does that mean? And how is this even like we have failed? This is what happens when we let other people control our story. Like that's a portrait of failure, right? So there's a great book by Houston Baker called Betrayal. It's a nice little book, not great, but it's a nice little book. And he talks about how the real legacy of Martin Luther King, what he did do for the civil rights movement, what was important for a nonviolent civil disobedience is he got people over their fear of jail. As long as you were scared of the white man's jail, you weren't going to do nothing. Like nothing. And I think that's true today. If you're scared of getting arrested, then you're very little good you can do. I mean, you can give me money, which I think you should. Go ahead, be scared of getting arrested, but or if you're scared of losing your job, like I just don't think there's much you can do for black people because your job depends on treating black people like we've always been treated, and that's not good enough. So if that's your, if you're like, well, I'll help black people, but I don't want to lose my job. You're not going to help. You're not going to do anything for black people. The best thing you can do is send your money from your job to me. Because, doing a show like this makes me down white unemployable. That's www.funkyacademic.com. Kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month and tell your friends and send this around because I think it's important, the quality of wisdom that I'm willing to dispense instead of go and read to my kids, which I'm going to go do right after this every week about this time. So Baker was arguing that MLK's real contribution to the movement was he just got over people's, he destigmatized jail. And once you destigmatize jail, you have to understand that the state will use your fear of jail in order to control you. So once you take away that fear of jail, that's one less thing to be afraid of, and one more way, like a better way that you can actually secure justice for your people. So I think that's important. I think King, but when you put King's picture on a police car, I think that sends the wrong message. It suggests that they were on the same side. Mandela's on there, so I don't know what to do with that, but it's not good. And this is why we need like more museums of white terrorism, because like that's the problem is we let white people tell the story about themselves, and then black people. We think it's a victory when we just get to tell the story about ourselves, but no, we need to tell the story about white people, because without that, everyone's confused. If you don't understand white supremacy, and this is what Neil Fuller said, and I think he's right. If you don't understand white supremacy, its operations, and everything else that you think you understand will only confuse you. Like, and this is why, like, even people who think they're like hip on gender, if they don't understand white supremacy, they are dangerous. They might as well be a Fed. And turns out Gloria Steinem actually worked for the CIA. So, like, there is that. So we need to actually understand white terrorism as the motivating, like, underbelly of the United States. It's the reason why we don't have nice things, because the terrorists, and the legitimized and we're scared that they'll pop off. So that's insofar as we live in a democracy, we just need to be honest about like the curriculum and how we create steadily this quality of terrorists that like are just our everyday teachers and cops and nurses and stuff like that. So yeah. So your Black history for me is that we should have a companion month, because you don't really understand Black people in the United States unless you understand that our culture, both internally and externally, was formed by terrorism. I mean, especially since we came over from slaves and pretty much wiped out, like, culturally, and like were formed in the crucible of terrorism in the United States. Like, to be Black, to understand Blackness is to understand the response to the sociopaths we live next to. And for example, and you're like, well, that's not true. That was 100 years ago. I'm going to give you, let me see if I can get the clip. Oh, I can. I'm going to give you Shirley Sherrod, and you tell me what you think of this. This is Shirley Sherrod. She worked for Obama until Obama fired her for making white people nervous, or for like someone insinuating that she may have made white people nervous, and then so she got fired. But this is Shirley Sherrod talking about her dad, and this is your Black history.
Now, your father's killer was never prosecuted.
Never.
What you came to learn after the event was that it did have to do with a dispute over a cow, right?
Yeah, he had cows, and I don't know how we had farmland adjoining each other, and some of his cows had actually gotten in our pasture in 1963. They came to round them up to get them, but there was one they could not round up. He left them there, and then on the morning of March the 14th, 1965, we met him when we were on our way to church. And my father told him, you know, if you come tomorrow, he would get some others to come and help, because they knew this was a problem cow. And but the next morning, when everyone gathered at the pasture, this man started claiming 5 or 6 of our best cows, and my father argued with him. And according to the others, my father said, "We don't have to keep arguing; we'll just go to court." And he was actually going to his truck. The man is still talking. He turned around to say something, and that's when he was shot.
So, struggles over land are throughout your story. Now,
So we all know that land is still in the white family's, like, they still own land. Like, nothing happened. Nothing happened. And that's just because, and we know that guy's grandkid looks up to his grandpappy, and he was taught by his grandmama to look up to his not even grand, like how old these people, like how many people are still alive, you have to understand. And the money still flows. And since the stock market is what it is, it's just kind of grown, right? So this idea that this was so long ago is ridiculous. Or this idea that the white wealth that was built off of black degradation has somehow gone astray. No, it's grown and now it's used to control. I'm sure the same families who controlled black people 70 years ago control black people probably in that same town today. I bet the mechanisms aren't much more sophisticated either. Right? So what does that mean? Like, it means that we need to start talking about white terrorism. Like, that's a common story. That's a common story of grandparents and like, everyone's scared of white people. Everyone, like, I remember I was talking to a faculty member on campus, and this guy is like a black professor, full professor, like been here since 87. And I was telling him what I was teaching in class. He's like, "Ooh, you talk about that stuff in class? Ooh, I don't know. You're bolder than I am." This is a grown black man. He's in his 60s. Grown black man trying to make it to retirement. And late 50s, early 60s. And he's like, "Well, you see, listen, man, I'm from Mississippi. So in Mississippi, I know you're from California, but I'm from Mississippi. In Mississippi, where I grew up, if a white guy accuses you of stealing, if a white guy steals your car and you go to the cops and say that white guy stole my car, the first thing the cop's going to say to you is, are you accusing him of being a liar? And then you have to find yourself saying, like, are you accusing him of being a liar? And the first thing you have to do is say, like, well, I don't know. I'm just saying he might have gotten confused about thinking that it's his car. And then you have to start doing all these stories. And like, that's just the way I grew up. And that's how I've gotten this job and kept this job. And that's that. And I am not that Negro. I'd say he took my car. He took it. Get him. I want my car back. But he was like, yeah, so I just, in dealing, and the way to get along, the way I was brought up to get along, you have to make up all these stories to say, like, no, it's actually not the white person's fault because he's scared of triggering like a lynch mob. And I think that's unfortunate. And this idea that like that man is free even today, I don't think that's free. Whatever he is, even he's got a good job, but he's scared to talk to white people. And if you're scared to talk to white people, you're not free. I'll say that again. If you're scared to talk to white people about like white terrorism, you are not free. What you're looking at right now is a free Negro. I'm what you call a free Negro. And a lot of people don't see one of these very often, I'm realizing. So that's why I'm emancipated. So if you're scared to talk to white people about white terrorism, then you're not free. And it could be like you're scared of them triggering their violence, or you're scared of like it costing you your job. Either way, you're just not free. There are only so many ways to not be free, and you are one of the ways of not being free. And that's a personal degradation, but it also ends up being bad for the community because at some point in time, you're gonna have to stand up for black people. And you have to stand up for black people with some in the face of some very fragile yet strangely powerful white people. And if you're not willing to stand up for black people in that moment, then you're no good for the cause. Now I'm gonna end with one story about a lot of these white progressive organizations say like we have a hard time attracting black people to our meetings, and like, well, we want to do good things, and we want to do good racial justice things. Well, the thing is, here's the deal: you're not serious, right? So these white progressive meetings and like white racial justice meetings, they still want to reserve the right to keep their inheritance, right? So at the end of the day, like they might be 90% better than like their cousins, but that 10% always leaves us holding the bag. That 10% gets us killed. That like they're like when you need them to stand up and they might sit on their hands. Or like you think that they're in for the cause and then all of a sudden like your cause isn't feminist enough for them, or it's not environmentally friendly enough for them, or it's not immigrant friendly enough for them. Like, no, like if you're gonna be an ally for Black people, you need to be Black first. You need to be Black first. Not necessarily only, but it needs to have like some sort of trump. We call the trump spades. Like there's Midwest and we call spades. Like we call the trump, and the trump is always, you can have an ace in another suit, and that ace might work in other suits, but as soon as I drop a spade, you need to get in line, or like we end up, we're not going to Boston, like with the train. Like we don't win the game. Like that's the only way racial justice works, because everything else can get weaponized. Like it all ends with Black men swinging. Like it all ends in Black men in jail. It all ends with Black men disposable. Like all of those other isms, environmentalism, mentalism, feminism, open casual borders. It all just ends with Black male disposability. So unless Black male disposability is your number one thing, everything else will get captured. And when I need you the most, you're going to end up siding with the people who happen to think that it's okay if Black men are disposable, as long as we save all of these other people. So if you want Black people to go to your progressive group, like you gotta I need to see you talking tough to a white woman, vegan, environmentalist, feminist in front of her kids. If I see you like giving her the business on behalf of Black people and saying like, no, you need to taking food out of her kid's mouth and giving it to Black people, that's when I know you're for real. If you're not willing to do that, because that's what it's going to come to. If you're not willing to do that, then like you're just a dicey ally and I'm not going to go to your meeting. It's just kind of a waste of my time. You can't really, like, you're unreliable allies, because at the end of the day, you'll throw us under the bus for even white people you don't like when it gets like you care about their feelings too much. You need to not care about their feelings if you're an ally for Black people. You need to be willing to risk your job. You need to be willing to risk jail. You need to be willing to risk your inheritance. So if the people at your little white progressive meeting aren't willing to do all of that, then like, it's just kind of a lot of talk, but that's what it's going to come to for Black people to be free. Once again, thank you for your time. I will see you another time. Knowledge and insight that will help you not squander your life and kind of rescue meaning from it, then go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, or make one enormous donations. I like the monthlies because it allows me to budget more, and that'll help me, with a marketing budget or getting better equipment that works all the time, because in a lot of ways, freedom means having equipment that works every time you turn it on. And I want to be a free Negro. So if you like what I do, go to funkyacademic.com and contribute. Thanks often comes in the form of cash, and the site takes credit cards.